Jurassic Park is the definition of a good time. It's a movie where the audience is in the hands of a master storyteller at perhaps the height of his storytelling abilities. And what makes this Steven Spielberg classic a textbook example in how to construct a movie despite having its share of obvious flaws?
It's a Unix system.
No, it's not a Unix system. It's a video where I have to look at 3 things Jurassic Park did well and 3 things it didn't do so well to figure out exactly why Jurassic Park is so great. This is the good and the bad in Jurassic Park. And simply put, the balance in the characters, the themes, and even the visuals of this movie is incredible. Balance is strength number 1. You've got the infectious optimism of John Hammond, dressed all in white and whose benevolence obscures his unfortunate capitalistic tendencies. He is contrasted by Ian Malcolm, who is clad all in black, comes equipped with constant sarcasm and jaded arrogance, and is a chaostician who recognizes the pratfalls of Hammond's indulgences.
Our scientists have done things which nobody's ever done before.
Yeah, but your scientists were so preoccupied with whether or not they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
But not only do the characters balance each other out with opposing viewpoints, most of the main cast of this movie is incredibly nuanced. Alan Grant and Ellie Sattler are the audience surrogates, and they are awestruck right alongside of us early in the movie when seeing the Brachiosauruses.
It's a dinosaur.
But despite acting like giddy children here, when it comes to philosophical discussions, they're more Team Malcolm than they are Team Hammond. They're able to look beyond their enthusiasm and question the wisdom in bringing dinosaurs back to life. It's in this way that Jurassic Park constantly gives us facets to its characters and lets us see all sides of an issue. Lex and Tim are good characters and represent why Hammond would build a park like this to bring joy to people. On the other side of that coin is Dennis Nedry, who represents the unfortunate side effect of capitalism, the greed that brings everything down for Hammond. Now, I don't think the kids nor Nedry are particularly nuanced, but I don't think Jurassic Park needs that from the side characters. It just needs them to balance things out. That's what's important to this movie. Alan Grant is a very relatable protagonist. He's kind of gruff, but generally well-meaning. But that alone wouldn't be enough to carry the load in a blockbuster like Jurassic Park, no matter how well Sam Neill plays the part. But it's also his character flaws, like his lack of technical savvy, as well as his anxieties that make him a well-rounded, interesting character.
So what are you thinking?
We're out of a job.
But more importantly, Alan isn't fond of kids. This could have made him unlikable if not handled gracefully, but the key is this trait isn't over the top. Yeah, there are moments where he acts like a jerk, but this isn't outlandish or obvious hatred, he's just uncomfortable. And there are moments early on where he shows some concern for their well-being, which makes their bond in the back half of the movie flow naturally, and it gives the movie the necessary emotional balance. So while we're watching this idyllic park turn into a nightmare, we're simultaneously having our hearts warmed by the developing relationship between these 3. Now, your mileage may vary on how effective this arc is, but my point is that there's just depth to the main characters. Malcolm is painted as this brilliant mathematician
Chaotician.
who ends up being right about everything.
Boy, do I hate being right all the time.
But he's also a hot mess, hitting on Ellie Sattler blatantly without really reading the room, and being clear that his brilliance is counterbalanced by his arrogance. But even while his narcissism might be off-putting, the movie establishes that he's a father, which is why it makes complete sense when he nearly sacrifices himself for the kids. And then Ellie Sattler could have just been the token female romantic interest, but it's really refreshing how she and Alan are in a relationship, but the movie doesn't focus on it or define it really. Instead, Ellie is a fully developed character on her own. She's the intellectual equal of all the male characters, and before venturing out into danger willingly, she sticks it to Hammond.
And you're
We can discuss sexism and survival situations when I get back.
And it's not just the characters, it's the story as well. The first hour of Jurassic Park is all build-up, it's all setup, it's bright, it's warm, it's filled with wonder, and it establishes Jurassic Park the movie and Jurassic Park the park as places that the audience and the characters want to be. There's a childlike enthusiasm to the first half of the movie.
Yahoo!
And then of course when we and the characters get our first real look at the dinosaurs, it's not a terrifying moment, it's one that just taps into that part of us all that wants to be taken for a ride, to feel joy.
Dr. Grant, my dear Dr. Sattler, welcome to Jurassic Park.
And the joy is persistent throughout the first half of the movie, and it's needed because this movie has heavy themes around capitalism, greed, and humanity's worst tendencies. And without the balance of joy and wonder, this could have been a nihilistic experience. Like, John Hammond is incredibly misguided here, and he is more of a bad guy in the book, but the movie treats him with great empathy. Like, his mistakes are born out of unbridled enthusiasm, not out of evil.
This place, I wanted to show them something that wasn't an illusion. Something that was real.
I mean, a lot of his mistakes are stuff that any grandpa would make.
The question is, how can you know anything about an extinct ecosystem? You have plants in this building that are poisonous. You pick them because they look good.
That line highlights Hammond's blissful ignorance, but also how precariously Jurassic Park is balanced. And at the midpoint, the awe and wonder are replaced by violence and chaos. This is the kind of auditory and visual spectacle that really hasn't been matched in cinema very often in like the 30 years since this movie came out. And what makes it work so well is the contrast to everything that came before it. It's balanced out. An hour of setup and joy makes way for a 10-minute tour de force showcasing the sheer destructive capability of the most famous dinosaur. And with the T-Rex attack and the Dilophosaurus attack, where this thing goes from cute and cuddly and just this adorable chirping to this psychotic, demonic rattlesnake sound. With these scenes, Spielberg shows his mastery at building incredible tension and methodically releasing it. But Jurassic Park balances these slower moments with the much more frenetic raptor scenes in the climax. We don't get the same type of set piece over and over. They're all different because balance is the key to Jurassic Park's magic. And Spielberg doesn't overdo it with dinosaur attacks either. We get a stampede where Alan and the kids are just trying not to be trampled. We have the scene on the electric fence, and we have the scene where the car chases them down the tree. This is a dinosaur movie, but one of the things that works so well about it is that it doesn't drown us in dinosaur attacks. In fact, some of the best moments in this movie are just conversations because the dialogue is so rich.
Spared no expense.
Spared no expense.
Spared no expense. Spared no expense.
That line is very obvious and very in your face, but how many people noticed the time that Hammond played a little bit of a different tune?
Sorry about your financial problems, Dennis. I really am, but they are your problems.
That is masterful dialogue, just subtly showing us the hypocrisy in Hammond that leads to the park's downfall. He's not all toxic positivity. He's a character with many aspects. And there's plenty of other forms of balance in this movie, like visual balance or tonal balance. Even more subtly, how about when the Dino DNA video is outlined in black and in the very next shot, Grant is in front of the projector and outlined in white? It's beautiful. Do I know what it means? No. And that's probably a sign that I've spent a bit too much time on balance. Let's move on to strength number 2 for Jurassic Park, which is coincidentally timing. Just think about the patience during the first scene where Alan, Ellie, and Ian see the Brachiosaurus. Like Spielberg withholds showing us the dinosaur, allowing us to soak in the characters' reactions, their emotions, which makes the eventual reveal work even today when you can't go a minute without seeing CGI. And I already talked about how Spielberg held off on showing us the T-Rex until the middle of the movie, but even in the attack scene, the way he holds back until the perfect moment is great. Like, it would have been so easy to just have the T-Rex destroy everything, but instead, it's slow, it's purposeful, it just builds and builds in suspense. And that's why this is maybe my favorite scene in any movie ever. And timing comes into play not just in the pacing of the scene, but also the decision to not have music. John Williams is brilliant, and this is one of the greatest soundtracks ever, but this set piece needed the absence of music to highlight the T-Rex's raw power. Hey! This scene expertly marks the T-Rex as a terrifying presence. With no music, its visual and auditory presence is suffocating. But Spielberg is going for a completely different emotion in the ending. There, we're not in awe of anything, we're just terrified of these raptors. So when the characters are utterly screwed and the T-Rex shows up, it is convenient, but it also feels so epic, including the heroic music. This wouldn't have worked in the first T-Rex scene, but here it works beautifully, because timing is knowing when to, but also when not to do something to get the appropriate emotion for that scene. If we're talking about timing, we have to talk about Spielberg's handle on jump scares. He famously had an all-timer in Jaws, and in my opinion, he recreates that magic in Jurassic Park.
Mr. Hammond, I think we're back in business.
This scare is masterful because Jurassic Park has had its share of scary scenes, but we haven't had a jump scare. And Spielberg distracts us from remembering the raptors are out there by having this tense electric fence scene. So as we are worrying about Tim and what happens to him, we're expecting to at least get a minute to gather ourselves before anything else happens. And then the raptor jumps out immediately. It's tonal whiplash and it's brilliantly executed. And Spielberg plays with our expectations with Robert Muldoon's death. Throughout the movie, he's established as being very savvy about raptors, and he's shown to be someone that could maybe protect the others, even smirking when the T-Rex is chasing them in the Jeep. So when we see the raptors have escaped, we're aware of the danger, but also expecting kind of an epic back and forth between Muldoon and the raptors, because that's how it's been set up, which makes the timing and efficiency with which Muldoon is taken down completely unexpected.
Clever girl.
And notice how Muldoon's very easy death occurs just in time for us to realize, oh my god, the kids have to deal with raptors on their own? Timing is everything. And that goes for the comedy as well, particularly when it comes to Ian Malcolm's dialogue.
That is one big pile of shit. There's another example. See, here I'm now by myself, talking to myself. That's chaos there.
But while most of Jurassic Park's humor works, sometimes it gets a bit too cute with itself, which is weakness number 1.
What do they got in there, King Kong?
The humor in this movie is best when it's character-based and sort of flowing naturally from the character's quirks. This line, though, just feels like a cute line that was thrown in to make the trailers, especially because Malcolm already knows what's in this park. It doesn't ring true. And unfortunately, that cuteness gets in the way a bit too often. Gennaro's painted in broad strokes. He's a one-note character that you aren't supposed to like, and I think it works when he dies with pretty much no dignity. But lines like this make me cringe.
Are these characters erotica?
No.
Nedry is better, he's funny and enjoyable to watch, but when he encounters the Dilophosaurus, I feel like he acts and sounds too much like a kid-friendly version of Newman from Seinfeld.
And no wonder you're extinct.
Thankfully, that line and Wayne Knight clearly hitting his hand on the seat are not enough to undercut the tension of the scene. I mean, it's so well executed, not much could ruin it.
Hello, Jerry.
Hello, Newman.
The cuteness is just annoying in these scenes, it doesn't ruin anything. One scene is absolutely undermined by it though.
It's a Unix system. I know this.
This is a blatant attempt to give Lex a cheesy hero moment, despite the fact that the kids don't need more hero moments, they just fended off the raptors by themselves. Also, just because it's a Unix system doesn't mean she'd be this calm. Kids would be panicking, they'd be hopping around, grabbing their hair, and doing nothing, like Tim. This is an example of Jurassic Park holding the audience's hand, and the movie can do this a bit too much. It can get a bit unsubtle, which is weakness number 2. In general, the dialogue in Jurassic Park is brilliant.
No, I'm simply saying that life, finds a way.
But then there are times when the themes and the characterizations are just sort of blatantly told to us with no real subtext or nuance.
When we have control again.
You've never had control. That's the illusion.
This is wonderfully acted, but it also feels like Ellie just screaming a theme that the movie was already subtly communicating to us and just making it blatantly obvious. And a similar thing happens with Grant and the kids. There's a beautiful scene in the tree where they're bonding.
What are you and Ellie gonna do now if you don't have to pick up dinosaur bones anymore?
Guess we'll just have to evolve, too.
But I kind of wish they cut this line out because we see that he's evolving. We don't need to be told it. And I feel like the final shot in the movie is actually like a visual metaphor for that evolution. But even if those lines feel a bit scripted, these are still very natural characterizations that I can appreciate. But I don't appreciate what Jurassic Park does with Robert Muldoon after an hour and a half of incredible competence and badassery, because the script torpedoes his character to make the plot work. Robert Muldoon is weakness number 3 for me, and before you jump out of a bush and maul me, not from the front but from the sides, hear me out. I love Robert Muldoon, but him not reacting whatsoever when Arnold and Hammond argue about shutting down the system is so out of character after he was constantly warning people about the raptors or expressing his concern over the raptor fences. Because shutting down the system, like, what does shut down the system mean? It means shutting down the system. And Muldoon is just like, he's just staring. Like, he grabs a flashlight, but that's it. And it's frustrating because it's clear that plot-wise, the only way for them to be able to shut down the system is for Muldoon to not question it, because if Muldoon was acting like Muldoon, he would have said, hey, will this shut down the raptor fences? If that's a possibility, let's not do that. There's a lot of clever girls in there, so let's prevent that. But no, the script makes him suddenly forget he's good at his job, which gets Arnold and himself killed. And Muldoon's death is iconic and awesome, but the way we get there isn't quite as smooth. And the reason this bothers me is Jurassic Park is pretty masterful with setup and payoff, which is strength number 3. And this includes the raptors and how they're introduced and woven into the story throughout, even though they don't become a real threat to the main cast till the very end. They're the first dinosaur we see in the movie, and though they fade into the background almost immediately, we have 3 separate and very different scenes that serve to remind us about them. And the thing with the setup in this movie is it's often done in plain sight without you even noticing something's being set up.
You stare at him, and he just stares right back. And that's when the attack comes, not from the front, but from the side.
So this scene seems to be setting up Alan's relationship with kids, or it's setting up the raptors. But what if I told you it's setting up something entirely else? That everything Alan says here is exactly what happens to Muldoon. But most people won't realize it until a rewatch because the setup in Jurassic Park is so subtle. Ian keeps bringing up chaos theory this and chaos theory that, so when Ellie asks him about it, excuse me for assuming this scene is just about explaining chaos theory.
And never repeat and vastly affect the outcome. That's what.
Unpredictability.
Great dialogue, but let's be real, this scene is here to set up the water in the cup gag when the T-Rex shows up. Like, the amount of craft that had to go into writing the scene so that water in a cup could be incorporated just to set up one of the greatest visuals in any movie ever. Absolutely immaculate setup. Then there's scenes like the dinosaur paddocks being empty that seemingly are there just to build tension and generate humor.
Now eventually you do plan to have dinosaurs on your dinosaur tour, right?
But hey, it also means that when Nedry gets spit on later in the movie, we don't need some clunky exposition from him screaming, "It's a Dilophosaurus!" like he's in a Jurassic World movie. Because during the tour, we learned all about the Dilophosaurus venom without even realizing it. We don't need to be told again.
Dilophosaurus is actually poisonous, spitting its venom at its prey.
And this kind of storytelling elegance, man, it's why even though Jurassic Park is flawed and can be cheesy and can be a bit too on the nose, it might also be the best told story in the entire medium of movies. Not best story, just best storytelling. And there's a difference. So thanks for watching, and this video is not nearly as balanced. It doesn't have as good of timing as Jurassic Park. I don't set things up as well. So I'll try not to be as on the nose as Jurassic Park. So I won't actually ask for likes and subscriptions. I'll just sort of stare at the camera and hope that through my character development, you know what I want and that I have control of the situation.
You've never had control. That's the illusion.